Hello, and welcome to the Fantasy Rewind podcast. I'm your co-host, Dylan Stoll, and I'm joined as always by my friend, Michael Whifford.
Hey.
So today, we're going to be talking about Rings of Power Episode 7, titled
Out of the Ashes.
So before we dive into that, we're going to give out the typical reminders here, where if you want to get in contact with the show, you could send us an email, which is fantasyrewindpod@gmail.com. You could get at us on Instagram, which is @fantasyrewindpod. And where you could get at us on Twitter as well, which is @fantasyrewind. Alright, so without any farther delay, let's dive into the rewind.
Fantasy Rewind. Alright, episode 7, aptly named Out of the Ashes. Because, we're literally, some of our characters are literally coming out of the ashes. You know, all of them are sort of, this is really much, or pretty much, a episode where we're, breath the exhale after just, getting punched or something.
Yeah,
or, it's sort of that recovery. Yeah, it's just like that, the sort of stagger, I guess, if you will.
Yeah.
We saw that in this episode, and it was something.
That is true. It was something. I will say, just general thoughts on this episode, that there were parts of this episode I really liked, and there were parts of this episode that made me want to smack some writers upside their heads.
I had some questions, and I'm interested to hear the smacking of the writers parts for you, but overall, it was pretty good. I think we just didn't get as much as I wanted in some areas, so I'm really looking forward to next week's episode, which is the final episode of the season.
Which I cannot believe. Oh my gosh.
It's wild, isn't it?
Yes.
I'm really interested to see kind of what happens with Khazad-dûm, as well as with the Harfoots. I think hopefully next episode we get a lot more with the Harfoots, because I feel like Galadriel and company are kind of at a point where
you can step away from them if you need to.
Yes, but at the same time, no. I think we are gonna have a melding here of Elrond and everyone getting together.
I think that's 100% happening. Yeah.
So let's just kind of start off. When we sort of flash in, we get Galadriel kind of waking up covered in soot and ash from the Mount Doom exploding, which we know it's Mount Doom. We know it's Mordor because at the end of the episode they had the Southlands, and then it
melted away,
the name burns away, and it formed Mordor, which I thought it was cool. It was thank you for spelling it out for us.
I hated that part, to be honest.
I liked the effect of it showing Mordor. It was a little cheesy, I guess. Yes, we know it's Mordor, but for people who don't know,
If you don't know, now you know.
Yeah, it's really laid out for you. I did think that her getting up and sort of finding Theo and them kind of going off was interesting. This was a question I had, because they ended up going on a separate journey than everyone else, but they were all in the same town.
Yeah.
That's where I was like, that's kind of weird, because how does she just pick up Theo and they just kind of go, and everyone else goes in a separate direction?
So that was one of my qualms with this episode, was Galadriel and Theo having their own little, buddy cop solo adventure. But as much as I dislike that, because it makes no stinking sense whatsoever, I will say, they were my favorite part of this episode. I thought that having Galadriel go with Theo and have her kind of lecture him on lessons she herself needed to learn was very purposefully done, and was done to grow Galadriel as a character, which you did get a little bit of growth for her in this episode, which she did need. Yeah.
And I think she's in a good place now. I think, honestly, that she has changed over the course of this season. Sometimes she took 2 steps forward and a step back.
Yeah.
But she is definitely in a much better place than we originally found her in.
Totally agree on that.
And I'm excited to see kind of what happens between her and Halbrand as they continue forward.
So let's just talk about Galadriel here, her and Theo, for a little bit. So we have Galadriel leading Theo off on the most roundabout way possible to get to where everyone else is after the eruption of Mount Doom. And she's telling him, oh, you gotta have hope, you can't give in to despair, you can't fear that your mom and your adoptive father, who to be Arondir, are dead. You gotta, have hope and believe they'll be okay, and they're there at the end waiting for you. And just the lessons of her telling Theo as well of don't just run in there, sword drawn to take out an army of orcs by yourself. You gotta do what's right at the right time and, be patient, and just kind of telling him all the things that she needed to hear. Now, though, something I thought was important and worth talking about, we have our first mention of Galadriel's husband, Celeborn, who apparently is dead.
I was wondering about that. I was like, isn't he supposed to be alive?
He is alive and well with her in Lothlorien if you watch the main trilogy here. So here's what I think is going to happen. Going into a little bit of predictions here. I think that her and Halbrand, their romance is going to continue. And once it gets to a certain point, who's going to come back but a Celeborn long lost from the wilds coming home to return to Galadriel and create some drama. And that's exactly what these writers are going to do. And I thought I was just wanting to reach to that screen and smack them for doing that, because it's so pointless and so stupid.
Well, gotta create some drama there. And also, if Halbrand is going to end up being... going
to be Sauron, then.
Sauron. Which, honestly, nothing in this episode took that from me.
Nope.
The fact that now he's injured and he has to go with her to the Elven
that just reinforces my belief.
To get healing. Oh, yeah. Oh, he's going to show up there. He's going to win some elves over. He's going to go and work on some rings.
Show his smithy skills. And And one thing, just talking about Halbrand a little bit more here. At the end of the episode, when he's laying in the wounded bed, looking all injured, and then all of a sudden he gets up and just hops on his horse and is like, I'm going to follow you. No problem whatsoever. Even though he's hurt so bad, he needs elvish medicine. I just thought that was so cringeworthy and just was a little bit bad. But one thing, sticking with Galadriel, though, I want to bring this up because she says, when she married Celeborn, they were happy for a time, and she was, dancing in the meadows with flowers and everything with him. And then it seems like she wasn't worried about her own personal crusade there. Because
that was probably before her husband,
brother died.
Her brother had died.
Maybe, yeah.
Yeah, that's kind of how I took it.
What I wanted to talk about that, though, is because earlier in the season, Elrond says to Galadriel, put up your sword. And she's like, what would I be without it? And she's referencing what she was without her sword, without being a warrior. And then at the end of this episode, she gives up her sword to Theo. So again, representing that transformation for herself, that progression, going from the mindless killing machine that we saw at the beginning of the season to someone who actually thinks before they act, and is becoming a much more likable character, in my opinion, the last 2 episodes.
Agreed.
But yeah. What else do you have to say about the Galadriel part of this storyline, Mike?
Not much. I do want to talk about the Numenorians.
Yeah, let's do it.
For a minute. Because in this episode, we sort of had Galadriel and Theo, and then we had the rest of the Numenorians and the Southlanders. And we have the Queen Regent going in and saving some kids with Isildur's help. And Isildur is apparently dead or trapped or something in a building, which I'm going to talk about in just a moment. But the big part of that is when the queen does save them and some burning timbers are coming down, she gets blinded, basically. It seems like permanently blinded, which I thought was interesting. So she is now permanently blind, which is apparently, it seems like the end of the world for so many people. Her being blind, I don't think impacts her leadership skills.
I mean, what it will do is it will make her appear weak to her people because they went on this crusade to the Southlands, and then their queen's going to be coming back after what could be argued as a defeat because of the success of Mount Doom erupting. And she's going to be blinded. They're going to have casualties. It's going to be this big controversy of why did we go help the elves? Why did we go and do this?
And she's staking her claim that she will be back with the might of Numenor behind her. Because she's just like, you know what? No, evil did not win here. I'm not letting them win. Mm-hmm. And I think that's really interesting because Galadriel's like, the elves will be ready. And so I like that dynamic, but we know we had to go back to Numenor because we were going to have some anti-elf sentiment building there. And when she comes back in this week in state, like you brought up, there's going to probably be some blame put on Galadriel.
Oh, yeah.
And the elves. And we should not go there because all we're going to do is lose our sons and daughters and end up getting hurt.
I thought it was really interesting, though, how you saw Isildur helping out the queen and, like, the impact of him seeing his friend dying or being dead underneath the rubble there. Where, like,
yeah,
he was clearly in shock. You know, nobody expected the Númenórean soldiers to die, basically, coming to this adventure here. And you just see Isildur, like, taking that in personally. But you also see a side of Isildur that we haven't seen yet in this season. And that is the competent side of him where he's helpful and, like, doing all he can to assist people as well. Because he's helping the queen rescue a lot of people, and he was willing to, you know, prop up that building while people were escaping and being run out there. And he's going to have this building collapse on him. And this brings up another point I wanted to talk about, and I think you do as well. Why did nobody go and check on him? Like, why did his father not go and say, "Where's my son? I'm going to take his body back," or "I'm going to make sure he's not buried alive"?
Yeah.
Like, just
I don't know.
Leaving him to have the horse have an Aragorn being dragged from the stream by Brago moment.
That is exactly why.
Yeah.
Dylan, that's what I wanted to bring up, is they've made so much to do about the horse being bonded with the rider, and I was like, they're just pulling a Two Towers Aragorn getting pulled out of the river by the horse.
Exactly.
That's what's going to happen. And I was just like, so stupid. That was probably my biggest moment during this episode. I was just like, why are we doing this?
And what's bad about all of this is I understand some people might be watching this with no concept of what Lord of the Rings is. I don't know who would be doing that, though. We all know Isildur is going to survive this. We all know.
Yeah, as is his father.
Yeah, as is his father. We all know Galadriel and Celeborn are married. I don't know why they're, like, pulling these, like, punches out of left field to try and, like, knock these characters down a peg that we know end up at a more prominent space later on.
I don't know. Maybe because they just want to have some surprises in store for people who do know the lore.
Yeah.
Too. Because they can play around with it a little bit, even if it's going to have the same end result. Now, that being said, I think we're pretty good on the Númenórean side of things. Obviously, we have all the orcs apparently still alive and thriving, and they all escaped somehow.
Because there was the chaos of the eruption.
But they were all in chains, is my thing. Yeah. Like, they were all in chains. Like, I still don't know how they even... Yeah, whatever. Anyway, they escaped, and we have Adar, who is back and leading them again, and they are now in their home. So that's kind of it for Mordor right now.
There is one more piece I want to mention with the Númenóreans.
Yeah.
And that is how devastated Elendil seems at the loss of Isildur, and how he has completely, or it seems that he's completely lost all faith in Galadriel, lost all faith in elves, and is just wanting to go back to Númenor and never see another elf in his life. But again, all this is happening without him even checking to make sure his son is actually dead, which
correct
is a weaker writing point for the show here. And you see his face, like, in just complete anguish and despair when Galadriel's talking with the queen, and he's just turned away. He won't even, like, look at Galadriel. And then when the queen commits to bringing Númenor back, he whips around and is like, what? Like, why would we come back here? There's nothing here but death. But yes, I thought that just the way they had Elendil portrayed there also was just a little weak.
Agreed. I don't think that losing your son obviously is going to cause you to really get...
Oh, for sure. Yeah, that's definitely going to break you.
to completely change your entire perspective on a group of people off of an action that was not, it's not like she sat there and put the sword into the stone and turned it and caused all that. It was outside of her control. Mm-hmm. So I don't know. I agree. It was kind of weak. A little bit of weak sauce. Let's go over and let's talk about Khazad-dûm.
Yes.
Because I think this is probably the next biggest area. Again, love the interaction between Elrond and Durin, and I think this episode was really great for a lot of, meaningful relationship building between them and sort of showing why they are such good friends. We also saw the impact of the Mithril on the sickened Avendesora.
Or not Avendesora, that's Wheel of Time.
Sorry, Wheel of Time. Tree of Life.
Yes, on the tree from Linden. You saw the effect of Mithril on the tree from Linden, the corruption that was on it. As soon as the Mithril got close, it healed the corruption and brought the tree basically back to life. Or brought the leaf back to life.
Yeah.
And that was enough to make Durin go against his father's wishes and say, you know what? My father forbade me from digging for Mithril, but you know what? This is going to help my friend. I see the proof that it's actually going to work. Let's get some Mithril going on here. But before we get into that, I just want to talk about the king of the dwarves, Durin the Third there, and his response to Elrond's pleas, which was, everybody has their time in the sun, everybody fades. If it's the elves' time to fade, it's the elves' time to fade. We're not going to step in and intervene.
Yeah, that seemed pretty, Durin's wife had said, narrow-minded.
Yeah.
In a lot of ways. But also, too, you could see kind of the greed a little bit from Durin's wife and him.
Mm-hmm.
Talking about it later on, like, he's so feeble-minded, he's so narrow-minded, and, he's not going to curb our ambition. You're going to be king one day, Durin. It doesn't matter. And so I was like, that conversation between them, I was like, this is almost a little uncomfortable.
Yeah,
because
it really was.
It's showing this greediness from you guys.
And so I just could almost see, the golden glint in her eyes when she was talking about, how much they wanted to be, king and queen, and how it was their right, and how they were going to take it back, and no other dwarf lord, no brothers of Durin, no one's going to stand in their way of getting what they want. And like you just said, Mike, the greed that they felt, or the greed that they displayed there, was just uncomfortable. It was not a place that you had seen them go before.
Yeah, that's completely correct. I'm interested to see kind of what else happens with them. We did get, like you said, Durin and Elrond ended up going down against the king's wishes and continued digging, and they found the huge mithril deposit.
Right. Then they got caught with their hand in the cookie jar.
Yeah. And he's just like, Dad, Father, just look. And he's
like, no, I'm not even going to look.
Elrond out, and you go to my...
You lose your status as prince, and he rips the chain basically off him, claiming him as the heir. Mm-hmm. Basically disinheriting Durin and then booting Elrond out of Khazad-dûm. And he eventually drops the linden leaf down that chasm. And you just see it floating and floating and floating until it goes all the way to the bottom. And you see our flash of the Balrog, Durin's Bane.
Yeah, and it looks like he's trapped.
So it looks like he's kind of pinned down below there, unable to come up, or asleep down below and not waking up until the leaf fell on him.
I'm more inclined to be the trapped, and it's the mithril.
It'll be the release
of
the mithril that will allow him to come back up and do that. Yeah. So when they delve greedily and deep for that mithril, we know what'll be waiting for them. And I just think this was a nice little in-your-face foreshadowing about what'll happen. Mm-hmm. And I'm really glad that they didn't show the Balrog free in this episode.
Agreed.
So my prediction or my comments, I think it was last episode for this, about how it'd be much more believable if the Balrog was released around season 3 or so. That might come to happen, which I'm much happier about.
Oh yeah, me too, because they're not going to fight the Balrog.
No,
there is no fighting the Balrog. So that's, I agree. And so we still have more political drama there. But my question is why don't they just take the little bit of mithril that they have,
just run it over,
push it into the tree?
Yeah, right. That'd be smart.
Because wouldn't that heal the tree? Or you know who else could heal the tree?
Oh yeah, a little stranger guy. That's or a big stranger.
I would say little.
Yeah.
Yes, a big stranger. So we go over to the Harfoots, and they finally get to their grove, just to find that a rock shot out of Mordor has destroyed half of it, apparently. And so they ask the Meteor Man, the giant, to fix the tree. And in his process of healing it, which it does appear he is healing it, and then one of the branches snap and almost crush a little kid, and then they're like, oh no, you're too scary. Even though, again, they ask someone to do something, yep. And then when something happens that's not their fault, it's not like you took the branch and like went to hit him with it or something, you know? They blame that person.
Yes.
I just can't. Even though we get a speech later on about how Harfoots stick together, and that's the one thing they have that the rest of Middle-earth doesn't. And I'm just sitting there like... That speech
made me want to smack the writers for doing what they did with the Harfoots earlier about showing how quickly and how willing they were to abandon everybody.
Oh, yeah.
Because, like,
absolutely.
Their whole, like, mantra of nobody goes off trail and nobody walks alone, we're all in this together, is all fine and dandy until they decide you're off the trail, you're off our little clan, like, forget about you.
Yeah, once push comes to shove, then no,
yeah.
Sorry, goodbye. So we do get, they kind of ask the Meteor Man to leave. They send him to the
big folk.
Yeah, the big folk city, town, and he heads off. And so, but then the next day, where he had, tried to heal the tree, all of a sudden everything's lush and beautiful again. And they're like, oh, he did it. And like, they're all excited and they have so much food.
Mm-hmm.
And then that night, they are visited by the 3 women in white.
Yes.
And if there was any question about
if they were good or evil.
Yeah, good or evil, or their power set, they're definitely like wizards or wizards, witches, I guess, magic users, magicians, whatever. They're definitely that, and they're definitely on the evil side of things. We still haven't had a single word spoken from them.
Correct, yeah.
But they were obviously looking for the man, and they point to where he is, and...
Nori comes running out. It's like, no, not that way. It's this way.
Tries to misdirect him, and they're just like, oh, this dumb child. It looks like they're going to go over... They kind of just disappear, and they're like on behind her, in front of her, on top of her.
Floating above her, maybe? I don't know. It reminded me of like witches like reaching down for a child.
Yeah, they like grab something out of her hair, and then her dad pops out with a torch.
Yeah.
Which they didn't have before.
You got me.
Yeah, I was like, they didn't have the torches because like they were hiding and everything was completely dark. So where was the torch lit? I don't know. That's a part, like, as I thought back on it, I was like, wait.
That's a good little detail. I don't know if they had a fire or not, because they do try to hide where they are, and like that's the whole point of them. Like, they hide.
Yes, they do. And so he goes out and he's like, I'm going to brain you if you touch a hair on her head. And so they extinguish his fire, take it, and they light all their wagons on fire. And then they just disappear. And it's like, oh, well, the entire feast that guy brought you is gone.
Yeah.
I do like that afterwards, though, with his speech about never going, always being resilient and never giving up and staying together and all this yada yada hypocritical nonsense. They are like, well, you know what? We're going to go and we're going to find him because he did, they could sort of are like, he did do the right thing. He did help us, and we could repay this kindness by letting him know that these people are searching for him.
So this right here is actually something I had a little bit of a problem with. And that was because this is an adventure, and hobbits and Harfoots do not go on adventure. And
they're going off trail.
And whether they're having Sadok Burrows with them or not, like, it doesn't matter. Like, this is completely out of character for any number of hobbit-like creatures other than Bilbo and Frodo, and there's a reason they were considered, like, outcasts, pretty much. So, like, yeah. Nori, I could see doing this, but, like, I could not see, like, this being, like, a whole thing everybody was behind. Like, it would be more of a situation that I could believe if they were like, no, Nori, you can't go. It's too dangerous. Like, yes, somebody needs to let him know, but it's not our role. We're just wee little Harfoots. And then she sneaks off in the middle of the night with Poppy. But for them to, like, all vote on it basically as a group and all agree that they need to chase down the stranger, I just don't see that happening. I don't see the Hobbits being the heroes. Or the Harfoots being the heroes in this case.
Yeah, agreed. But it's setting up for, their adventure, like you said. So we're going to have their storyline, and it wouldn't surprise me if they meet up with the wizard and they get to the Elven Woods, or, we got to have an emergence here of these storylines. Like a convergence, sorry, not an emergence.
Yeah, and I'll just be interested to see, like, how far away this, like, big folk settlement actually is and who it actually is. One other thing...
Because, yeah, they don't say.
Yeah. One other thing I do want to talk about with this episode is when Bronwyn is talking about, like, where they will go now. Like, you hear her basically describe what I'm taking as the beginning of Gondor. And, like, her describing, where they'll have their next great city and where they're going to build and go to after their home was all taken, after Mordor was brought up. But I don't know, like, what that would actually do. You know what I mean? Like, where would they get the resources for building such a great city? Would it start off...
Numenor?
Yeah. Would it start off as, like, Isildur being brought there if he was found injured or whatever? But yeah, I just thought that was like a nice little Easter egg I wanted to make sure I mentioned as well.
Yeah. I don't know. Suppose we'll see. I'm excited for this next episode and conclusion here. I think it's just going to kind of put a bow on things and just set up some little things for the next season. I don't think we're going to have anything too crazy.
So yeah,
I do think it will.
Let's do this.
We'll
let's
see a lot more with
predictions for the final episode here.
Yeah, I do think we're going to see a lot more of Meteor Man and the Harfoots kind of continuing on. Honestly, this episode could have almost been
Could have been a season finale.
Yeah, it could have been the season finale. That's why I'm kind of like, I don't feel like there's going to be too much happening in this next episode. Whereas, like, we have a lot. It's very different with House of the Dragon. We're just like, oh, what? My gosh, the season finale is going to be crazy, and we're just kind of like, oh, okay, like they're going to do some things, but nothing too crazy here in this next episode.
The one thing that has me really interested is that the next episode is titled The Eye. And I have seen promo images of what looks to be Sauron in his armor for the next episode. So I am really curious about, like, what becomes of those promo images. Like, what were they? Are they images of him in the past? Were they images of him in the future? What is going to be going on? And is it the Eye of Sauron? Which is the only thing I can think of why they would title it The Eye. But, yeah, I'm really interested to see what that turns into.
And he doesn't become the Eye until after his physical body is, like, destroyed, correct?
Right. Yeah. But, like, it could be, like, his sigil. I don't know.
That's true.
So other predictions I think we should... I'm going to make here are going to be that Elrond and the elves are not going to simply settle for fading into nothingness. And I'm hoping that it doesn't lead to a war between elves and dwarves, which, who knows? But
I don't think it will.
I think what will happen is next episode, the king of the dwarves during the third will no longer be king by the end of the episode. I think that during the fourth, the one we've been seeing with Elrond, will take over as king by the end of the episode.
Oh, agreed.
As far as, like, the Harfoots go, I think they'll find the stranger. I think that he will probably end up saving them from some other peril. And then...
Probably the three women.
Yeah, probably the three women. And he'll maybe reveal a little bit more about himself. I'm not sure if we'll ever get, like, an actual answer this season about who he actually is, but we'll find out. I also fully believe that Galadriel will make her way with Halbrand to Lindon with Gil-galad and Elrond, and everybody will reconvene there for the season finale.
Yeah, agreed.
All right, so that's going to do it for us for this episode. But if you have any predictions about what's going to be coming for the season finale of Rings of Power, be sure to let us know, and we'll see what happens. See if anybody can hit the nail really on the head here and get it 100% correct. I know that I am still not super bought in with a lot of the characters for this series. Galadriel right now is probably my favorite character just because of the growth she's had over the last couple episodes. And I'm really happy to be able to say that because she's a great character. And we'll see what becomes of our friends of the South and if they do indeed found Gondor or not. But that's going to be it for us. And it's going to be Two Nerds signing off. See ya.
See ya.